So welcome, everyone. I am Nathan Scott, and it is a pleasure to see some old faces, new faces, faces who's joined with us for the last few months, the last few years. So this is our September Community of Practice, and this is just a chance for communities who are working with us or new to us to meet others, get to know each other, and just have conversations. I mean, that's really that's what the community of practice is about. It's intended to be a community. And it's a community where those of you who are working with the MassEnergize site or other MassEnergize tools, it's a place to get updates, ask questions, get support, and hear from others. So I do see some new faces. So what I'd love to do at this point is just go around the room, go around the Zoom screen, and ask if you're new to please just introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, and something about the community that you're working with, or a project that you're working on. We'd love to know that. So I'll just open the floor to any new people to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to have some of the old timers introduce themselves as well.
So I'll go. My name is Rick Coleman. I'm with the town of Pelham, which is out near Amherst. And we're a pretty small community, about 1,250 residents and about 550 households. And we're trying to put more of a focus on the residential community. So as part of that, we'd like to see what we might be able to do as part of MassEnergize. So I'm here for informational purposes.
Great. Well, welcome, Rick. It's always great to have new communities, and yeah, excited to hear about what you're doing in Pelham. Okay, is there anybody else who's here for the first time?
I'll just piggyback on Rick's. I'm across the river in Northampton. We're looking at setting up a coaching program. So I want to see what folks here have to say about that.
Great. Well, thank you, and welcome, Eric.
Thank
So
you.
Alan Gordon here. I've been here, I think, once before, so not totally new, but maybe a lot of people don't know who I am. I live in Newton, on the board of Green Newton. Actually, September 1st, I became the president of Green Newton, took over that role from Marcia Cooper, who's maybe has been on some of these meetings in the past. And, happy to talk about things we're doing in Newton when appropriate.
Great. Well, thank you, Alan, and welcome. Good to see you here.
And Mike,
yeah, Michael.
Daniel said too. We're both from Monterey. We just started with the group a couple weeks ago, and so this is good timing for getting some introduction about coaching, which is the idea to bring it to more residents in Monterey.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Great to have you here. Okay.
I followed Mike in from Monterey.
Great, Daniel. Welcome. Welcome. Okay. So I think, okay, sorry. Any other newcomers? Or first or second time with us?
I am Kate Davies. I'm the new sustainability chair for Boxborough.
Great. And Kate, and a couple others who might have joined us towards the end, if you don't mind just renaming yourself with your town or organization, that would be great. And Susan, that would be great if you did so as well. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is just to hear maybe some highlights. We oftentimes have the sharing at the end, but I thought it would be nice to have sharing at the beginning of our meeting, just because we've been away for the summer. I know many of you have been doing a lot in your communities over the summer, and particularly for the new folks, it would be great to just hear a little bit about what some of the other communities are doing. So let's just take 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd love to hear just highlights from anybody who'd like to share. Mike said they have a new website, and other folks, you guys see your hands up. So I'm not gonna. I'll just open the floor if anybody would like to step up.
Hi, my name's Debbie Marion. I'm with Econadic. We have 2 articles on our town meeting warrant, and we don't expect them to necessarily pass, but we hope that it will get conversations started. One concerns banning artificial turf, and the other concerns banning gas-powered leaf blowers.
Fantastic. Okay, anybody else? Thank you. Thanks, Debbie. Anybody else? Yeah, Karen.
So we did 3 climate cafes this summer. One was a repeat of the electric vehicle petting zoo, which had about 40 people. And then we had a plant-based community potluck, which went really well. And then we had something different. We had travel with climate awareness, with 3 speakers kind of giving different angles on the carbon cost of travel, which was really interesting. And also we, just to back up a little to Springtown meeting in Acton, we did have a warrant article on banning gas-powered leaf blowers, but it got pulled off. So I'd love to talk with Debbie about what happens in Eco-Natick, what happens with in-town meeting in Natick at some point. But anyhow, that's where Acton's been.
Great.
What is an electric vehicle petting zoo? I'm sorry to.
It's just an excuse for EV drivers to get together with their vehicles, and we've done it in the parking lot of the local library. And I mean, the idea is that you get to look at vehicles, sit in them, check them out. Unfortunately, people don't get to drive them. And this year we actually had a couple animals as well, because when we did it in 2023, a little girl came up to me and said, "But where are the animals?" And I was like, "Oh no, no."
Hey, can you put a goat inside a Tesla? I don't know.
I don't know, but you can put it inside a Ford 150 Lightning, that's for sure.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, Wendy from Williamstown.
Hi, yes. Well, I love the petting zoo. It just reminds me that our Library for Climate Preparedness Week is hosting an information session about electric vehicles with Green Energy Consumers Alliance is going to participate via Zoom, but we are helping them recruit EV owners who will have their electric vehicles there, and hopefully folks can see them. And I love the petting zoo, just as a marketing, make it fun. And the other thing I'll share that we've been up to is, I can't remember the name of the grant that you guys sent around. And, one of the things that you could apply for was assistance with an outreach campaign. But since we already had funding for that, we applied to the state for funding for hiring a consultant to help us look at decarbonizing some of our municipal buildings. So our fingers are crossed that we get that funding. And, our town doesn't really have the capacity to write those kinds of grants. So our committee took the lead on writing it, and we worked with the town to, make sure it was stuff they wanted to do, and to make sure it got submitted and all that.
Terrific. Yeah, congratulations. That is the Energy Efficiency Community Block Grant, the EECBG. So good work.
Can I just say that we stole the idea of the EV petting zoo? I think it might have originated in Harvard with Ellen. So I don't want to take credit for something.
Okay, can I mention Ashland?
Sure, yes, please, Rob.
Okay, so Ashland's been working hard, trying to get more people to become familiar with Energize Ashland. We had a very successful sustainability day at the farmers market. And one of the activities we're working on is trying to work with restaurants to get more plastics out of their containers they give out. It's a campaign that we want to work on. And we're going to continue that. We're going to have Ashland Day coming up in 2 weeks. And we're going to talk more about that, trying to approach the restaurants and see if we can become less plastic oriented. So there are a variety of different options. We also have a large car show this weekend, and we convinced them that they actually going to take 10 EVs and put them together, and we try to promote the idea. And we put our tent up from Energize Ashland, and so that's kind of fun. Ashland's also working with our sustainability manager on trying to educate people on network geothermal. That's another thing that's happening in Framingham. And we'd like to get Ashland to be on the list for the next time. So we're going to have some activities in town to educate people. So those are the kind of things. And we have a successful now newsletter out. So that goes to about 450 people. So we're working hard.
Fantastic. Energize Ashland is, yes, going great guns. No, it's great. It's great to see the work you all are doing.
Thank you.
So Alan from Newton, you mentioned network geothermal. So one of the things that our executive director is doing is that 2 of our schools that are being rebuilt are putting in geothermal. And she approached the city to ask them if they would be willing to turn those into network geothermal systems and to provide heating and cooling to the neighborhood. And the city didn't know how to respond to that. And so finally over the summer, the city legal team gave Green Newton a go-ahead to actually start canvassing the neighbors to see if they might be interested in it. So it's very early exploratory phases, but an interesting concept. If any of your cities or towns have new buildings where they're putting in geothermal, to turn those into municipal buildings, to then turn them into neighborhood network systems. So we'll see if it's possible. It's not clear yet that it will be possible, but we're looking into it.
Great. All right. Anybody else like to share kind of highlights from the summer? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, this is an in-reach event, not an outreach event in Wayland. We have Energize Wayland, and there's been for the last 5 years, there's been a core group of, it seemed like 5 or 6 people and we, unfortunately, one of the key contributors had to step away due to health issues. And so we had some concern about whether it's sustaining Energize Wayland. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, Ellen Tone, who many of you know from MassEnergize, and she's also a driver for driving force in Energize Wayland, organized a get together at her house, bring a sort of a potluck for a couple hours. And it was really, well, pardon the pun, energizing to have about 20 people who really care about, climate action, attend this and have a chance to socialize. We hadn't, because of the pandemic, we never had a face-to-face get together, and it was just really fun and refreshing to meet people and have a few hours to celebrate what the group has done, and to see a whole new cadre of volunteers ranging from a really dedicated high school student to some people with families, and then the seniors, the retired seniors who've been contributing all together. So recommend if you have a cadre of volunteers and professionals in your community, get them together once in a while, and it helps everybody. And it's, I think, just like the MassEnergize conference back in April, I find it sort of motivates me when I discover there are all these other great people who really care.
Fantastic. I'm going to actually put Wendy Wilkerson, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot and just have you mention something about Newburyport and the importance of community for climate resilience. Can you speak to that?
Okay, well, last Thursday, there was an event that Storm Surge, which is another organization in Newburyport that was created a few years ago. They actually invited Dan Aldridge he was a professor at Northeastern to speak on, and he's written a couple of books, I believe, on creating community to drive change in a community and get people together and for resilience. So I think it's really, I wasn't part of that planning group, but I attended the session, and I think it was very inspiring, because I think we really, if there's a disaster, particularly people who are single or elderly just may need help. And so I think we need to create more connections. And so he did talk about various kinds of connections, like sideways and vertical. And he did research in, I think it was Japan after the tsunami, and researched some of the communities and which ones fared well and which ones didn't. And so it was very interesting. So I'm excited about it. I'd like to see something done here. But Nathan attended, and I was happy to see
thank you. So that was a setup. But to Steve's point, what this researcher said is that communities where people know each other and they know both the first name and the last name. So it's not just like, oh yeah, I know, but people know each other, and those are the communities, to Steve's point, where people are getting together, where people are socializing, where people have contact and connection with each other. Those are the communities that have been shown time and again to be the most resilient to the effects of climate change, to the effects of natural disasters, people helping people. And, we all know that when we know our neighbors, we fare better. So Steve, I just want to commend, Wayland for taking that. And I'm going to encourage everybody to really make an effort to bring people together because we live in this digital we spend so much time in our digital boxes. It's really, really great to bring people together in person. So, okay, yes, Jean.
So building on that, I'm here along with Mike Roy from Addison County. And so we, in launching our county-wide program, have been meeting with town leaders and officials to discover what is special about their communities and how we can put together programs that are going to serve them. And one thing that we've been discovering is there's a lot of communities that have small communities, sometimes hundreds of people only. They have no way of reaching even their own community members. And we have done things like send out a flyer in a tax bill, because that is the only way that the town knows to reach everybody. So it's been really interesting doing this outreach work and trying to gear our work towards finding ways to help these communities build that community resource as well.
Terrific.
I want to mention,
and to build on that, we're going to be going to Virgins, Vermont. You're welcome to come join if you're so inclined. They're having an energy fair, and we decided to hire a bluegrass band to bring more people to show up, because we think people, you bring them in with some music, and then you get them to stay with good information.
Fantastic.
but I want to mention in Ashland, Florence and I have been working on the Ashland Farmers Market for many years. And actually that turned out to be very much a community building effort. And We got a lot of bits. The farmers market is very friendly. We have places to sit, we have food, we have music. People come every week regularly, and it's a good way to build community in a small town. And so it will be very rewarding, and it has led to other organizations, maybe even this. This new organization of Energize Ashland is coming partially out of the farmers market.
Great, great. Okay, does anybody else, we're going to be moving on shortly, but does anybody else like to share a highlight or something going on in your community that happened over the summer, or just something you'd like to share? Okay.
Nathan,
Yes, I'm Susan from Community First Partnership. Yeah, hi, Susan.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, everybody. Just more an announcement than anything else. I've been completing the 3rd year of the Community First Partnership Program for Springfield, West Springfield, and Pittsfield. And we at Energy Save will not be doing it again next year. So we're looking for community support for other organizations or municipalities that want to take on that town. And also just to say, the application period for the next 3 years for the CFP, or Community First Partnership Program, is out now. It's due, I think, November 1st, and there's more money available, positions with benefits. It's definitely expanded. Whether it's enough or not, I don't know, but it's definitely better than it's been. So if anybody wants to learn about that, shoot me a message and I'll give you the details. Alrighty.
Great. Yeah, and Susan, maybe what you could do is just put your name and email address in the chat, and then people could contact you.
Absolutely.
So. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It's so great to hear kind of the updates and the activities and the socializing and the fun that people are having. And it's great to, just have a chance to kind of learn about what each other's doing. So what we're going to do now is tonight's kind of topic nominally is on coaching. We've sent out some announcements just to say that we're going to have a few speakers. Steve Bright is going to be sharing a little bit about Heat Smart Alliance's coaching program, and Acton has developed a coaching program. Unfortunately, Andrea Becerra, who is the sustainability manager, is not able to join us, but she did give us a kind of a video and is going to be going through a little presentation. So I'm going to show that now. And then Karen, hopefully, is willing to kind of take some questions about Acton's program. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everybody will be able to hear this. So just give me a second, and then let me know if you can hear it all right, because I'm concerned about the sound. But okay, so here we go. And
hello, my name is Andrea Becerra. I'm the Sustainability Director for the town of Acton. I've been with Acton for about 3.5 years now. I was invited to present on the Clean Energy Coaching Program in Acton. Unfortunately, I can't be there in person, but Karen Root-Watkins will be there, and I'm sure she will fill in any gaps in the presentation and help answer any questions that come up. I'm also happy to answer any questions over email or jump on a phone call if you'd like to talk more about the program from town operation perspective. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So we launched the Clean Energy Coaching Program in 2023. We have a total of 13 coaches. Only 12 of the coaches are actively coaching residents and businesses as well in the community. One of our coaches who stepped back is still involved. His role has actually become quite vital. He takes in all of the clean energy coaching requests that come in through our Google form and assigns them to a specific coach. And that's become a really important piece of the puzzle. We had 2 rounds of coaching recruitments. For our first round, we enrolled hired, enrolled. I'm not sure what the appropriate term is, but I'd say enrolled because they are not paid. These are all volunteers. But we selected 6 for the first round, and then an additional 6 for the second round. We circulated flyers around town. We did social media posting. We shared on Facebook, on Nextdoor app, and Karen can touch more on that particular outreach. And then we conducted interviews. And then from that short list of folks, for the second round in particular, those folks actually got in touch with one of our coaches, who did a second sort of layer of vetting. And also we saw it as an opportunity for them to hear one-on-one from a coach on the experience of coaching itself. So this is the structure of the Clean Energy Coaching Program, which I think is unique to coaching programs. We have our clean energy coaches who are all volunteers, and then we have our clean energy advocates who are all volunteers as well. And it also includes myself and our environmental analyst, Lauren West. I think the structure is unique because the clean energy coaches are basically tasked with providing all of the technical capacity and all of the technical support for residents and members of the community who are seeking support in making clean energy adoptions and electrification to their building. And then we have the clean energy advocates, which includes myself, Karen Root-Watkins, who's there today, Deborah Symes, Jude Ehrenstein, and then Lauren West, who I mentioned earlier. And we work together to promote the program itself. We work on the marketing campaign. We sort of assess the program and how it's doing, and think about ways and methods of keeping the energy alive, making sure coaches feel supportive, troubleshooting along the way, so that coaches can really just worry about coaching, and then advocates can really just worry about marketing the actual program itself and making sure that residents are aware that this resource exists. Abode is there as well as a partner who we've hired and paid to help manage the website where the Clean Energy Coaching Program lives. They also helped set up the training for the 2 different cohorts of coaches. And they're also there for any additional backup support. They also have connections to MassSave, which have proved quite helpful in the past. For instance, in helping resolve some discrepancies on what counts as a 5+ unit when you're dealing with condos. We were able to clear up some of the gray area for a large condo association that now is eligible for the $10,000 whole home rebate, instead of the rebate that they would have previously been eligible for, the $2,500 per ton that 5+ units are eligible for, and is not as substantial as that $10,000 whole home rebate. So things like that, Abode has been able to support us on, and I think that's also been a really key piece of the puzzle. Since we started this program, this is a bit outdated actually. We've almost hit 200 requests. So I did look right before doing this presentation. We're almost at that 200 request received mark. But when we did this assessment, we had received 161. This gives you a pretty good sense of what the percentage of requests are for. You can see that a lot of it has to do with heating and cooling, and different versions of heating and cooling in that response. So primarily most of our requests come through for the installation of heat pump systems. Adding solar is the next one, and then a mix of weatherization, and then general questions about being greener, and then installing electric vehicle chargers, exploring the adoption of an electric vehicle, And then, like I said, different variations of heat pump installation, exploring, adding air conditioning, and so on. I think what's really important to provide for context of why I think our program has so much support both internally, and then why I think it also has so much support from the community, is that Acton has a very progressive community and also a very active set of volunteers who are incredibly involved in town efforts, incredibly involved in a push for more action at the local level to address climate change. These are photos from the Acton Climate Emergency Declaration that was passed in September of 2020. It calls for net zero as quickly as possible with a target date of 2030. After this emergency declaration, the Sustainability Office was created and I was hired. And I get to work really closely with our volunteers. And I feel pretty lucky to work in a community like this because the work is substantially easier and just so much more effective when we get to collaborate with community members. So Karen Root Watkins is there today and she can talk more about that in particular. But Energize Acton is a really big and important piece of the clean energy coaching program. The advocates who I mentioned are also representing Energize Acton, and I think Karen can touch a bit more on the details of Energize Acton, but it is a close collaboration between the Acton Climate Coalition and the town of Acton in pushing for greater action on climate and responding to that climate emergency that I mentioned that was passed in 2020. So that was brief. It's strange presenting to a non-audience. So I think I'll stop there. I think I gave most of the basics about the Clean Energy Coaching Program, and I hope Karen can fill in any gaps. Again, feel free to reach out to me. That's my email, abecerra@actonma.gov. You can call me at 978-929-6515 as well. And look forward to hopefully popping in at a future meeting. Thank you all so much for the time, and look forward to hearing how this went. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was a good presentation. Karen, do you want to add anything before? Well, what I'm going to just open it up for just a couple of questions or clarifying, but then we will have a longer conversation later. But Karen, do you want to add anything to?
I think the only thing, I think one thing I might add is that in this collaboration between the town and the volunteers, and it's not just between the town and Energize Acton, but also with Green Acton and Mothers Out Front and various other organizations in town. But one thing that's been really, really helpful is that the Clean Energy Coach program has been keeping a data sheet of the requests and how people hear about it. And as Andrea indicated in that pie chart, kind of tracking, what are the topics people are calling about, what kinds of energy systems do they have, et cetera, et cetera. But another aspect of that data sheet that's really helpful is that when community groups do events, we have access to the data, so we can go in and say, like, if Energize Acton does a series of, in April of 2023, we did a clean energy home tour day with 7 different homes that people could choose from. And what was really helpful for me was that I could go into the coach data like a month later or 2 months later and see how many people who had come to the tour had actually gone on to sign up for a coaching session. And the coaching sessions can be anything from just like really introductory questions to like the nitty-gritty of analyzing vendor quotes and whatnot. But for me, like looking at like how, how effective have these events been? It's been really great to be able to see, because like when people call a coach, that's a very concrete step. And so that's another kind of offshoot of the collaboration. All right, I'm going to stop talking.
Good, good. So I think what we'll do is I'd like to go on to have Steve talk a little bit about Heat Smart Alliance, and then we'll open it up for kind of general questions, both in reference to Acton, but also in reference to anything Steve might present. So Steve, why don't you go ahead, and then there will be a time for questions and conversation after that.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Steve Bright. Live in Wayland, and I'm active in the Heat Smart Alliance and also contribute to MassEnergize and Energize Wayland. Keeps me busy. And so just about the Heat Smart Alliance, we're an all-volunteer organization. We started in 2020. We have now about 130 members from over 40 Massachusetts communities and some communities outside the state. And our mission is to promote adoption of energy efficient heat pumps in Massachusetts homes and buildings. It seems, without taking it for granted, why do one-on-one coaching? Because it is a time-intensive activity. Most of the impactful actions that household can take to reduce their household carbon emissions are complex, and heat pumps particularly so. So we've found, it's our belief that providing this one-on-one assistance, neighbors to neighbors often, is a highly effective way to get people to follow through on actions from the initial learning about the step to actually doing something. And I wish one of the big to-dos for me is to really develop more data that shows this is a case, but certainly it certainly feels that way, and I think those who are doing coaching probably can support that. I'll summarize briefly what the Heat Smart Alliance does and what we offer, and then talk about what my observations of communities like Acton that have started local coaching programs, what are the key ingredients for success. So at the Heat Smart Alliance, we provide, one of the things we do is we're kind of an overlay organization, much like MassEnergize. We support multiple communities. We have a few members, Heat Smart Alliance members, in quite a few communities now, but they're the ones who are most effective are also involved with their local energy advocacy organization, their local climate action organization. So in that sense, we provide knowledgeable speakers for public events, educating residents about heat pumps. In 2023, we spoke at over 30 events this year. So far this year, we've done over 20 events, and we go outside our own communities. I've personally done events in Quincy and Chelsea and places like outside of Wayland. And then that's the first step, is getting people interested in heat pumps. And then we also pioneered one-on-one energy coaching starting in 2020. And as part of that, we developed a set of resources that are available to anyone, really. We make them available at no charge, and they include a 4-part coaching model that has a set of coaching principles and a knowledge and skills matrix to sort of get coaches up the learning curve. With something like heat pumps, there's a lot to learn, but there's beginning skills that a beginning coach should have to get started and sort of learn on the job. And then we also have, for example, a liability waiver that's a concern to, it should be a concern to almost anyone who's doing coaching, possibly going into people's homes. And that liability waiver has been used by quite a few communities now. So those are examples of some of the resources we provide. And then starting about 3 years ago, we developed a heat pump coaching basics course. We've offered it 4 times now. The most recent offering was this past spring, and we had over 40 registrants from not just Massachusetts, but places as distant as Colorado. And about 25 of the students actually completed the course. It's a 5-session course that ran over 5 weeks. And we had each session consisted of a lecture plus a breakout that involved case studies where the students got practical experience. And that course is online. It's accessible via our website, and any people who register available for self-study. And so those are some of the things, concrete things that we offer, and I think our resources have, we know that they've inspired a few communities to start coaching programs. We had presentations recently in the last 4 months at our monthly, we have a monthly call that anyone can attend. Wellesley Municipal Light Plant, Lisa Wolf talked about starting Wellesley's coaching program and how she benefited from Heat Smart Alliance resources. And then more recently, we had a group from York, Maine called York Ready for Climate Action that started a coaching program there. And, you know, they also, you know, benefited from the resources we provided. So some observations on what I think are the ingredients for success in coaching programs. One is, and you really, Acton is really an exemplary program. What you heard from Andrea and also from Karen are, you know, sort of captured all the components of success. So local organization, it's great. Some towns have now, many towns now have a municipal sustainability manager like Andrea, and who may be driving it in some places. And in other cases, it's committed volunteer leaders like some of you on the call. If you have both of them, that's even better. And then it requires, you know, doing outreach in the form of events, tabling at local gatherings, could be, you know, farmers markets or climate fairs or what have you, doing flyers, you know, both through social media and flyers through, you know, actual physical flyers through tax bills and so forth. And lawn signs can also be effective. And so that activity has to be an ongoing activity for that local organization. And what it's going to do is drive demand for coaching. And we've trained some coaches who've sort of been standalone in their communities. They're interested in doing coaching, but then they can't plug into a local organization. And I would say that tends to be a pretty frustrating experience because they don't have a source of clients. Then you need some way to receive requests, and Andrea talked about the web pages hosted by Vote Energy. Could be MassEnergize website that you're using to collect client requests, but people have to be able to submit requests somewhere. Usually these days it's got to be a web form. And then another part of that is really recognizing that just you know, handling those requests in a timely manner within a few days of getting the request, that somebody acknowledges and starts trying to find a coach who's willing, because you're dealing with volunteers. Their availability varies, so it can take some, you can't just have somebody saying, well, this is your case. They have to accept it and say, yeah, I can handle that in a reasonable amount of time. And so that can be a role for somebody. And I think Karen mentioned that they have one former coach who's taken on that role in Acton. And I think that's true for all of the successful coaching programs. You know, then you need a supply of trained coaches. And hearing some crosstalk, maybe Nathan, you can figure out who that is and mute them. All right, so you need a supply of coaches and to train the coaches. And there, right now, the options, as I understand it, Abode Energy was providing training to quite a few communities, but isn't doing that right now because they were engaged as the prime contractor for the MassSave program and don't either. There's some conflict of interest or a lack of capacity, but they're not able to do that right now. So the main resources are the Rewiring America has offered an electric coach program now multiple times. So that's one, and Abode actually teaches that program. And then the Heat Smart Alliance, the coaching course we have, it's sort of on me to recruit some more volunteers to actually teach the course. I've been the main teacher of it, and I can do it maybe twice a year, but it's a time-consuming activity that I can't offer it more frequently than that. And I make we make the training course materials available to people. Anyone who registers within a week or so, they'll get access to the online training materials for self-study. And and then the other part that I think Andrea and Karen didn't mention, but is probably going on in Acton, and Karen can confirm that, is a community for the coaches themselves. In other words, you can't just send them out to coach and send them cases. The coaches need to learn, and they learn by reviewing their cases with other coaches, getting feedback from them. It's great if you have a professional on tap like Abode, but some communities don't. That's not always possible. So the coaches can be a source of knowledge to each other. And then, of course, the Heat Smart Alliance, we have a coaching working group that meets monthly, and that also is a forum for knowledge sharing among the coaches. We always try to incorporate a case review. And then new coaches really benefit from having a shadow or a mentor on their first few coaching assignments, a more experienced coach who can guide them and set an example for them. So those are, I think, the key to not just starting the coaching program, but making it sustaining. And I'll stop there, and hopefully you'll have some questions, and we have some good discussion now.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. Really nice to hear kind of the overview and the work that Heat Smart Alliance is doing to kind of really promote coaching. And thank you for the work you do to teach coaching classes and being willing to share with us tonight. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat, but it is a little bit easier for me if you raise your hand. But questions either for Karen about the Acton program or for Steve on the Heat Smart Alliance's approach. And they really are kind of the gold standard on heat pump coaching. So this is a great opportunity to ask questions. Okay, I see that Lynn, I believe, put one in the chat. So let's take Lynn, and then I see Wendy Wilkerson. Lynn, do you want to just ask? You want to come off and ask your question?
Yeah, I keep thinking of how we can make it a bigger impact than just our local communities and spreading it out a little bit. It's great. I haven't seen so many different communities and join us tonight, but I'm wondering if we should, like, I'm thinking of my company in particular, like consider doing some of that kind of talk at companies, local companies. We're in the high-tech area. There's a lot of tech people around. I'm just wondering, and then also might be a great way, Steve, to get more coaches, because there are a lot of engineers out there, and maybe we get them interested in the process of coaching while you're also teaching people about heat pumps.
Yeah, it's really subject to volunteer availability. I guess I think my own experience, given that you have, and the question prior to that from Wendy and Energize Williamton was, how is the Alliance funding? Well, we get we have very modest expenses right now because we don't have any paid staff, and so we have enough donations from individuals to cover those expenses, and and so far we haven't, we have adequate, I would say, funding, and we would have to figure out the way to consume more funding is certainly to hire staff, but we haven't done that.
But then,
and
you know,
so-
if you have a company do it, you could charge a nominal fee to speak, and
That
so
would
that
be
could cover the cost as well. So that's why, I mean, I think companies are looking for some of that for their employees, and I think that that's maybe an opportunity, a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. The one reservation I have, to be honest, Lynn, is the there's a geographic component to it. So it might be a good way to recruit coaches for the Heat Smart Alliance or for the local communities, but for actually doing coaching, for example, installers like the heat pump installers tend to have coverage areas, territories, and that gets more. And one of the things that coaches do, at least our Heat Smart Alliance coaches, they'll tend to provide a short list of installers, not really recommendations, but referrals. And that's harder to do when you have a geographically dispersed population like in a company. And I've had this same experience helping people in my house of worship, although they tend to be somewhat localized, but they can be more dispersed. So
I wasn't actually thinking that you were going to end up then getting coaching gigs. More that one, you find coaches, and two, you just get people. I don't feel like enough people know anything about heat pumps, and it wouldn't be so much. It would be more of a generic talk as opposed to, we want to come to your house and help you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, that's great.
So we're gonna move on. Thank you. So Wendy Wilkerson, you had your hand up, and then I see Ellen Liker has her hands up. So Wendy, do you have a question?
So I had 3 questions. One is for Karen. How much does Abode cost for the training and the website management? And for Steve, how do we find out more about your resources and your 4-part model? And then also for either one of you or both, do you have like an implementation plan of, the steps of putting together a coaching program, what to do and when? Or maybe that's what Steve's 4-part model is.
My answer is really quick. I do not know how much Abode charged the town. I do know that the second set of coaches were trained through the Rewiring America. And I don't know if the town paid for that training. I have a feeling that it's...
Yeah, there's no charge for the Rewiring America isn't charging for that training as far as I know.
Right, that's correct.
I think there were costs I recall for the Abode's training when they were doing it for communities was maybe around $800 per trainee. I could be wrong about that, but numbers, like $6,000 to $8,000 were the order of magnitude that I recall hearing.
And then for the website management, you have any idea?
Well, they're using a Salesforce CRM, and so it's really just amounts to some pages in the 1 or 2 pages in Salesforce. I don't know what they charge for it, but it's something you could probably do on your own.
I had previously reached out.
Yeah, again, if you're considering using the MassEnergize platform, you would have ability to put up forms and things like that you would need to collect coaching requests.
Okay.
And then as far as Heat Smart Alliance resources, if you go to heatsmartalliance.org, I'll put the link in the, and there's one of the menu options I think is, to remind myself it may be under Engage with Us or under Coaching. And so there are resources, and they're all available for download. In some cases, you might have to fill in a form to request them, but so we collect your contact info, but there's no charge for any of those. And then I'd recommend if you're, it's always beneficial if you can get somebody in your community to join the Heat Smart Alliance, attend the coaching working group meetings, and that gives them access to our shared other additional shared online resources, such as a Google Drive and a online discussion forum and Slack. And so we have, that's always a way to at least one or two members in your community can start to learn about this. And then there's a separate training link. It says training, but I think it's Become a Coach. You'll see a link to our course, the Heat Pump Coaching Basics course there. And anyone can register for it, and we'll give them access to the training materials.
And Steve, there's a related question. Can anybody join to become a member? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah, we don't anywhere, Massachusetts or not. Yeah, and we don't have any. We don't charge for it right now. Maybe we should charge a few dollars a year, but there's no charge now.
Great. Okay, Ellen in Harvard.
Hi, it's good to see everyone. So I just, so we have a coaching program as well in Harvard, and some people have gone through the Heat Smart program and some are just coaches who have, a lot of experience. And we do something twice a year at our general store where there's space where we can have a meeting, invite the community and have all the coaches there. So that's worked well. And Steve, you've known about that we've done that with one of your people. But the thing that's come up that I'm questioning, and Steve and even Karen in Acton, is we have a lot of people who want ground source. So our coaches have to know ground source quite well, or at least have some ground source. And my sense is that's not, Heat Smart is, I know, does air source. I don't know if you're doing any ground source now, and I don't know what Acton's doing, but we're finding more and more requests for that. So that's become a bigger issue in our town of having people who can really speak to that. And particularly since the incentives are also greater for ground source. So
well, we do have a few people. One of them you probably know, Tony Jagodnik, who's an active member. And, I think that you could probably bootstrap if you can get some advice from Tony and then gets one of your community members who has ground source. I mean, I don't see some of the fundamentals aren't that different, concern about the heat load. Of course, there's a smaller number of installers who are qualified and do handle ground source, but
yeah, we have three people, my husband included, who have done ground source, but I'm just wondering if other people are seeing kind of this growth in that versus the air source. Because I also had a builder complaining to me recently when I'm trying to get the specialized code through town about all the issues with air source and getting parts, and I don't know, I got a whole litany of stuff coming at me, and I was like, well, I don't know. I just, I wasn't the right person.
Yeah, there are always amongst the, there are always plenty of doubters about a new technology. So I think that might be part of what you encountered. I don't think there's generally been a shortage of parts or issues with air source. I just find in the more more densely populated areas, even Wayland, where we're not really densely populated, but the issues with ground source disrupting existing landscaping and taking longer and sort of inhibits people. It's a bigger lift here than in your area. So more. It really, I think, ties directly to how densely settled an area is.
Thanks.
Okay, Mike Roy and then Wendy from Williamstown.
Okay.
So Karen and Steve, thanks so much for sharing what you've been up to. One of the things that we've been wrestling with is heat pumps are clearly fabulous, like that's the way to go. But there's all this stuff that has to happen kind of ahead of the heat pump and alongside the heat pump, thinking about audits and weatherization and finance. And so I'm just curious in terms of how you're going to pay for all of this stuff. And so I'm wondering, to what extent do these programs focus on the technology of heat pumps and how much they also focus on weatherization and all of the ways to take advantage of the IRA and other state-based incentives. And to what extent those are local to Massachusetts, and to what extent this could be extrapolated, say, for example, to Vermont.
Karen, you.
I know that incentives has been one of the topics that the coaches have been trained on in Acton. One thing that's nice about the monthly coach meetings that Andrea facilitates is that we try to cover a topic. I mean, there's chance for interaction between the coaches and sharing notes, which has become very valuable to them. They really appreciate the sense of community, but it also gives us a chance to, kind of keep topics that come up close to hand. For instance, that what Ellen mentioned about geothermal. We've had a session on geothermal. We've had ongoing sessions on incentives on aggregated electricity, et cetera. So that's an important part of the process. And all of the coaches really emphasize weatherization.
Yeah, I'll echo that when in our training and in my teaching of coaches, I always emphasize that looking at weatherization first. In many cases, it doesn't make sense to do it first because the installation of the heat pump can disrupt existing weatherization. But certainly considering it first in Massachusetts, that means except in the communities that are served by municipal light plants, that means getting a mass save audit and sometimes doing additional measures that aren't covered by mass save, like what are called hot roof insulation. But definitely weatherization is part of it, and also explaining the mass save incentives, which are on the surface look simple, but when you get into the rules, surprisingly complex. And on average, I'd spend 25% of a coaching session discussing the incentive options and informing people about those. And even though that information is widely available online, the devil is in the details. And so it really helps to talk people through that.
Thank you.
Okay, Wendy Wilkerson. Excuse me, Wendy Wendy in Williamstown.
Yes, thank you. I'm Wendy
Sorry
Penner.
about that.
No problem. Just, I mean, this isn't really a question, but I guess I'm asking for advice. I think this is a Berkshire County or Western Mass thing. I cannot get someone who's knowledgeable to come out here and tell me about getting my home retrofitted with heat pumps. I have installers come and they tell me heat pumps don't work in this climate. I mean, people, they're putting heat pumps in people's homes out here, but I don't think these people are going to be able to, there's a real lack of sophistication among our installers, is my sense. And there's people in the Pioneer Valley who are more sophisticated. Getting them out here, and especially if you want to have follow-up questions, is a huge problem. So I'm so inspired and impressed. And I know that we need more expertise about heat pumps in our lay population, but the installer capacity is a huge problem. And I mean, what can we be doing to advocate to grow this workforce, or are there things in the pipeline? And I mean, I know that's a whole big conversation, so we probably don't have time to get into it, but I just want to say how frustrated and disappointed I am with, the state's pouring all these resources into this. And I just, I think if it's new construction, great. They seem to have figured that out, but retrofits in Western Massachusetts, or at least in Berkshire County, we have a lot of work to do, and I'm very discouraged.
Can you get a contractor from Vermont? Because they're doing some amazing things with air source heat pumps.
Yeah, that might be helpful.
I'm from the Berkshires, so I totally understand, but
that's a good
but
suggestion.
there's
Maybe
many of the
Bennington.
Same problems here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here being Newton, or is that?
Oh, no, that was Vermont.
Oh, in Vermont.
Yeah,
You're in Vermont. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's great people, but there's also exactly what I'm hearing from you, Wendy. It's a mix.
I mean, I've had multiple people and, and they're like, well, you can't disconnect your furnace. I would not let you do that, anyhow, we don't need to go into the whole lore of it, but it's discouraging. And, I'm telling them, I know it's possible to do this because, this is well, it's a bad idea. It's not, you're going to have problems. You need a fossil fuel generator if you're going to do that, just a whole list of things.
You tell them, girl.
Well, I guess what I've seen is I think that situation was similar in Eastern Massachusetts maybe 5 years ago, and I've seen not all of the installers, but many of them have gotten more sophisticated and more trusting of heat pumps. And what particularly helped in the last 2 or 3 years is the whole home rebate that MassSave offered. That caused quite a few installers to realize that if they wanted to compete for business, they had to offer heat pumps. And some of them, we definitely saw some of them making mistakes like oversizing systems. But I think the general knowledge has improved over those 5 years. And if you can just find one installer who's, start with 1 or 2 who seem to be understand heat pumps and not actively telling people that they don't work, that could be a starting point. And the other resource that you might try is there's a heat pump installer network. In order to file for the rebate, MassSave rebates, if you're in a MassSave territory served by one of the utilities, I think you are. Then if you can look through, there's something like 1,200 installers who are in that heat pump installer network. But if you can comb through those for some who are based, I often favor calling installers who are somewhat local to where you are, because they're not sending a truck for, their technicians aren't spending an hour in the truck to get to the job. They're spending less time and therefore more efficient. But if you can comb through that database and find some installers based in your area, they should not be telling you that because they're in that, and they get some training from MassSave on heat pumps, and that should be starting to have some effect.
Good. Okay, yeah, and please, continue to put comments and questions in the chat. I see several related things. We have time for a few more questions. Yes, Rob Mullenbeek, and then I think Susan, you also had a question. So right after Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was wondering the coaches that we're very interested in starting a coaching program too, but it's kind of going to be very slow. I mean, I don't know how many people we actually can get. And my first question is: are all the coaches formally trained in like in Acton, or do you have some people that are technically pretty savvy that can do some of that work, or?
It's kind of a mix. I mean, some of the people have engineering background. One person has a pharmaceutical background. One person is a software engineer. One person is a stay-at-home mom. And she's awesome. So it's a mix. I think our coaches have come from people who've gone through the process of doing some kind of clean energy technology in their own home. And they just become passionate about it.
Okay. The other question that I had is, I know there's this organization, the Metro West plug-in organization that Acton is part of, as well as some of our neighboring towns, like Wayland and Framingham and Natick. So do people share coaches at all across town, or is it pretty much even in that organization? Would that be possible, or would you prefer, would it be definitely be recommended to have local coaches and that be it?
I think at this point, the Acton coaches are mostly coaching Acton folk. I think part of it too is that, I mean, the coaches can start to feel overwhelmed.
Right, yeah.
so you have to kind of balance. But I know they're definitely within the plug-in campaign, especially amongst the, municipal folk, the sustainability directors, an opportunity to start to kind of share notes and, but I don't know, Steve, I don't think people are actually sharing coaches.
No, I mean, there's a very, in my early coaching days, I would coach all over the place, but I just don't have time anymore. And a few of our Heat Smart Alliance coaches are willing to coach in neighboring towns, but it's not something it would be onesie twosies. It wouldn't be something that would be sustainable. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, time for a few more questions. Susan, Hope, did you have a question?
I didn't have questions so much as to just note that training, really good training of the coaches comes with time, and a lot of them need support all the way around, and ongoing support, both for the social part of it. How do you talk to these people in a way they can understand, to the technical part. But what I really wanted to say is, as far as training new people, I took the course from Rewiring America for the energy course, and I can't tell you what a great course it is. It does the whole topic from soup to nuts, and they do a lot on weatherization, and it's really very comprehensive, and the teaching materials that they have are superb. They have more stuff that you could spend hours just going into on a tangent. It's fantastic, and it's free if you can get some of your coaches signed in. That's the only problem. I think you might have to wait a long time. I just can't say it's enough about it. It's just really superb. That's it. Sorry.
Great. No, that's great. Yeah. And Talia has just put, thank you, Talia, for just putting the link in the chat to Rewiring America. So, okay, so we're going to take Daniel, and then Jean, I think will be our last question or comment. So Daniel, go ahead.
Thanks. We're second homeowners in Monterey, and there are a lot of second homeowners in Monterey, Mass. And we've gotten solar. We had a great assistance from our solar installer to navigate Mass Save and all the incentives that were there, and did a really excellent installation for what we had. And going beyond that, I found it very difficult dealing with Mass Save. It's been a process actually starting from before the pandemic, and the pandemic got in the way a little bit. But we've had an assessment. We would love to get the insulation done there. We have some dampness that comes in our basement. We found it very difficult finding someone who can deal with that. It's an old house. I guess the catch-22 is you can't get insulation and seal up your house if you have any dampness in the basement. And we really can't do anything for any Mass Save things toward heat pumps and things like that for any of the incentives if we don't get the insulation first. So I think, as you said before, Steve, it's a very complicated process. In terms of what gets done there. I've read through a lot of it, have understood a lot of it, have called Mass Save and gotten many different answers from people when I've talked to them about what could be done and what can't be done. And we're kind of looking for how can we learn, and then as a group in Monterey, how can we learn more about our situations and then teach others and get them to begin to do that. And the rules seem to be sometimes different and sometimes not different, and maybe change year to year for primary homeowners versus second homeowners. Sometimes some things apply there and not. Where we find a source to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, my mantra is every home is unique, and you'd rather not be. It sounds like you have a relative. That's one of the tougher situations that you have.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jean.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as we get our coaching collection of people going, just getting started on that, how many clients a typical coach takes on? Is there a range that you find for volunteer coaches, what they can do, what they want to do?
I was just talking to one of the new coaches today, and he was saying, I wish I knew what to expect, like how many people I should coach in a given period of time. Some of our coaches, like they really love talking with people. They really love visiting houses. There's one coach who takes on a lot. There's one coach who takes on very little. It's
what does a lot or a little mean? Is that like one a week or one a month or?
Okay, so I would say that one of our coaches, so we started in February of 2023, and we've coached about 200 households. And so I'd say one of our coaches is probably in contact with maybe 6 to 8 people a month. But that could be, like I know at the beginning of the summer, he was telling me that he had a conversation with someone in, say, May of 2023, and that person had just come back to him in June of 2024. So that person needed, and it kind of, it goes back to the Monterey situation, I think, is that, sometimes people call and they're just doing that sort of initial thinking about it and trying to sort out some of the challenges. And then they take that whole year kind of looking at different facets of it. And then they come back. And then I know with this June's conversation, that particular resident has ready to get into more of the nitty gritty. So the coaches, and I think sometimes it's kind of strange for the coaches too, like they have these conversations with people and then there's like no contact. And you feel like, oh, the person's gone forever. But then, we're starting to realize that it's like, not only is this a complicated process, but it also really, people need time to sort out money and to sort out priorities, and MassSave doesn't help very much, but yeah, it's a real process. And so I'm kind of guessing, it really varies, but like our one really active coach, I would say, maybe 6 conversations, 6 people he's in touch with a month, maybe more.
Yeah, I think that would be probably the upper limit for a dedicated coach. I think a typical coach might be 1 or 2 a month. At a pace, they might have multiple contacts with multiple clients during the month, but in terms of a pace of taking on new cases, for a while I was taking on a new case a week, and that was a pretty blistering, that was a pretty big time commitment. But I might be tend to dive in more intensely than some. So it really depends on how deeply you go. But you have, because of this spread over time, to be effective, you have to keep good records. You have to keep your email organized and keep some notes on your what you discussed with because if they come back to you a year later, you don't want to have to recover all that information. So to do it effectively, you're doing record keeping. I would say, even an initial, typical initial meeting would be an hour to an hour and a half if you visit the house. And it might take half an hour of preparation, half an hour to an hour of preparation, looking up some information on the house, reviewing a questionnaire, exchanging some email with them to schedule the visit. And then afterwards, I always try to sit down within a day or two and write a follow-up email about here's what we discussed, because I know they're not going to remember what we talked about for 90 minutes. They're going to remember a fraction of that. So I give them a action list and some points, and it takes time to write that email. Now, there could be ways to use boilerplate and so forth to make that more efficient. We're not there yet.
And if I could just jump in, because I mean, Steve, you guys are your organization is truly dedicated to heat pumps. So I mean, when you take on a heat pump case, that that is a real commitment of time. But our Acton program, like we're fielding questions about EVs and some of it can not necessarily that EVs are way simpler, but some of those questions can be fielded much more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out, Karen.
Great. Okay, well, we're
Very helpful.
almost at the
Thank
end
you
of
very
our
much.
time. So there's a few things I just wanted to share to wrap up. But first of all, I just want to say thank you to Steve, to Karen, to Andrea Becerra, all of the people who have presented tonight, and all the people who are thinking about coaching, starting coaching. It really is it's an important process. So thank you for sharing both your wisdom, but also your questions tonight. So,
Nathan, can I just say one other thing?
Oh, okay, yes, go for it. Yes,
Just
go, Karen.
Steve you were saying like you'd love to know like how effective it is having a neighborhood coach. It was really interesting for a while. Acton had, you can contact an abode coach, or you could contact the volunteer, clean energy coach. More people contacted their neighbors. More people went for the non-professional volunteer coach. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so we just have a few announcements just as we wrap up. And I do see there were comments shared in the chat, resources shared in the chat. Everybody who's on the call tonight will get a follow-up email from us, and we will be sharing the resources that were shared in the chat. So if there were questions or something that you saw in there that you wanted to get back to, you will get that in a follow-up email. But before we end the night, I want to also remind people, those of you who are with us in April for our MassEnergize Community Climate Leaders, we are already in the process of planning next year's conference. And needless to say, coaching will be a part of what is talked about at the conference next year. But Megan has just a question for you as we start our planning for next year's conference. Megan? Sorry, Megan, we can't hear you. Oh, yeah, we don't hear you, Megan.
You're a little glitchy.
Okay. Megan, do you want to quickly type it into the chat and maybe one of us can read it? Okay.
So we're looking for some volunteers for our conferences upcoming April, people to volunteer on the day of event, help with planning, brainstorming, etc. So if you are interested, please get in touch with us. You can email us at info@massenergize.org, and I'm putting that in the chat right now. And that's again looking for volunteers for the conference. If you're interested in planning, brainstorming, volunteering on the day of, we'd love to hear from you.
Great.
And we're also kind of wondering about location of the conference. We have a really great widespread of our community members here, and got some of you in Vermont and Eastern Mass and Western Mass. Is there a strong preference? And you can type this in the chat or unmute yourself. Is there a strong preference to be on Route 128 or 95 or on Route 495?
So I'm not sure how best to handle that question, but I'm going to either put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat, and if you have...
Go ahead, Talia.
Well, put it in the chat, and if you have any strong opinions to share, feel free to share them now.
Great. Yeah, what we're trying to do is trying to make sure that the conference is accessible to people. Last year, we held it in Waltham, which obviously is not far from the 495 as well as 90. But we're also wanting to be sure that people can easily access wherever the conference is being held. So. And I see a few people rooting for Vermont. Maybe in the future. I'm not sure next year we're going to have it in Vermont, but we'd love to as the conference grows, and we certainly expect it to. Mike, in a couple of years, we'll take you up on the offer. How does that sound? So
I couldn't help myself. Sorry, I was kind of
that's
joking.
okay. That's okay. That's okay. All right. Well, we're almost out of time, but I also want to take this opportunity to thank Talia. Talia, as you know, has been our very dedicated administrative assistant. Also, she's been supporting many of you in terms of just doing outreach and supporting you with kind of with community support. Talia is going to be transitioning from one role to kind of another role, but we're not sure. Talia is going to be, she's got bigger and better things to be doing. And so we don't know how long she's going to be with us, but this is likely to be her last community of practice. So I just want to say a shout out to Talia. Thank you for all your support, for your note-taking, and for all your organization. We really appreciate you, Talia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being in this community. I've loved working with many of you on this call and hope to in the next 2 weeks until my time at MassEnergize is up soon.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. If you have a last comment or question, you want to put it in the chat before we go, but I don't want to keep anybody past 8:45. So thank you. Have a good night, good evening, and thanks to all of you who took the time to join us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great meeting.